Hello, I'm Nate, aka Beater Mutineer, and in today's video, I want to talk about a quest in Dragon Age Origins that I can't stop thinking about, even 15 years later. The Arl of Redcliffe, and specifically, the difficult choice you have to make about Connor's fate. This is not necessarily the quest that I think about as the most memorable quest in Dragon Age Origins. I have a lot of quests that I really like and even love in DAO, and this is usually not one that makes the cut. This is because I think there's a lot more interesting lore, and in comparison, Redcliffe is a very simple place. A village of regular people, really mostly just humans, who are just being attacked by undead creatures. It's not what I would consider to be a super interesting quest, but nonetheless, the Arl of Redcliffe is a quest that kind of sneaks up on you. It is fascinating from a narrative perspective because it's a quest that doesn't have a right answer. Before we get into things too deeply, I want to take a moment to say a special thank you to my members who help keep this channel running. I'd really appreciate it if you'd consider joining the channel as a member to support me and unlock perks like early access to videos. Joining is very much appreciated, but not required. I am always thankful, even if you just take the time to like the video and maybe leave a comment. Back to the video. As I said, I'm talking specifically within the Arl of Redcliffe quest about the choice that you have to make about Connor's fate. Now, because some people may not know exactly what I'm talking about, maybe you haven't played Dragon Age Origins, or maybe you played it a very long time ago and you don't remember, let me refresh your memory. During the quest to the Arl of Redcliffe, you and your party arrive in the village of Redcliffe, where the Arl, the lord of the region, resides in the nearby castle, because you are trying to get his support against Loghain, who is this major villain who has taken over the country, and you think that he is a bad guy. He isn't leading the country in the correct way against the monstrous creatures attacking, and you want to take him down and replace him with someone else. In order to do that, you need Arl Eamon's help. He is supposed to be someone who is very well respected by the nobility in the country, and because of this, he seems to be your only option. However, you may have heard before you got to this village that the Arl was sick. Maybe because of that you didn't go here immediately, maybe you did go here immediately. Whatever the case is, when you get to the village, you find out that things are even worse than what you initially may have heard. The Arl may as well be dead because no one has heard anything from the castle in days. Every single night, a horde of undead descends upon the village, attacking all of the inhabitants, and they have to defend themselves with the few resources that they have available. The villager who notices your arrival beseeches you for help, and you of course have the choice to help defend the village or not. You could leave the village to its fate and just return later, but regardless of what you do, what we're talking about here is the second half of this quest. Once you reach Redcliffe Castle, you will find a young human man locked up in the dungeons. This is Jowan. He is a blood mage who escaped from the Circle Tower and who was caught by Loghain's people and then forced to act as a secret agent, an assassin on Loghain's behalf. Because Loghain thinks Arl Eamon is a huge threat against him, someone who could depose him, someone who could turn the nobility against him, and he doesn't want that. So he sends this blood mage to act as a tutor who can teach Connor, the Arl's son, magic. Now, I don't know exactly how Loghain knew about the fact that Connor, the Arl's son, was a mage, because this was a fairly closely guarded secret in the family that seemingly only the Arlessa, Arl Eamon's wife, knew. Jowan posed as a tutor to help teach Connor how to hide his magic better from people, and the Arlessa, Isolde, accepted Jowan as a tutor for her son, having no idea that he was actually just contracted to kill Arl Eamon. In any case, Jowan explains that he didn't really teach Connor anything that should have had such terrible consequences, but that Connor might have accidentally summoned a demon who is causing all of this death and destruction. And he is right. Connor did accidentally summon a demon out of desperation because his father was dying, His father fell mysteriously ill, and nothing that anyone tried was helping. No potion, no ointment, no magical cure seemed to work against whatever secret poison Jowan used. So the Arlessa actually sent out pretty much all of Eamon's knights to look for the mythical ashes of the prophet Andraste, said to be able to cure any ailment, just in hopes that that might save his life, if indeed they were real and if indeed they could be found. And so you can see how a young boy might just be absolutely terrified at the thought of possibly losing his father and be coerced by the demon into a deal that supposedly saves his father's life. However, of course, the demon made the deal in its favor, so it keeps Arl Eamon alive in a coma of sorts, and it took control of Connor's body. And the body of a mage for a demon is something extremely powerful, turning the mage into an abomination, a very dangerous creature of great power. The demon took advantage of Connor's youth, his inexperience, his lack of knowledge about magic and demons and such things, and then once it had access to the material world through Connor's eyes, it found great pleasure in tormenting people, in killing a lot of the people in the castle, only leaving some people alive, and even those people who were left alive, maybe they were just left alive for entertainment. Some of them, such as Arl Eamon and Isolde, Connor's mother, were either kept alive because of it being part of Connor's deal, or perhaps just to be able to keep Connor in check, keep him from being able to fight harder against the demon's influence. Connor was trying to fight this demon from inside, but it would be extremely difficult for any mage, especially someone so inexperienced and quite young, so not very powerful, to be able to successfully fight off a demon's influence, especially a demon who you make a deal with. Now, of course, you as a player, or perhaps your character, could pin the blame entirely on Jowan, since he was a blood mage. He may have taught Connor things in a wrong way that made Connor consider dealing with demons. Of course, he is the reason why Arl Eamon was sick to begin with, because he was there actually to just poison the Arl, and teaching Connor stuff about magic was just his cover to be there. If you consider Jowan to be at fault, you can very easily just execute him right there and then in the dungeons. However, we're talking about Connor's fate here, and that is a fair bit more complicated than choosing to execute Jowan or not. After you make your way deeper into the castle towards the throne room, you finally meet Connor, the possessed Connor, the demon speaking through him and taking great pleasure in the torment that it's inflicting upon everyone. You have to fight a group of people who are mind controlled by the demon to attack you, and finally, after the revelation that a young boy, regardless of his possessed or not status, is behind the terrible tragedy, you have a moment to speak to Isolde, his mother, Tegan, the Arl's brother, and decide what to do. There are three choices that you can make. You can consider that Connor is an abomination, a demon-possessed mage who cannot be saved, and who is a danger to everyone around him, and you can just go and confront him, kill the demon as it manifests, and then kill the boy as well. You can have his mother mercy kill him too as part of that choice, but that's not really very relevant. The important part of that choice is that Connor dies, and everyone else lives. The other two choices cause Connor to live. One of the choices is to have the blood mage Jowan perform a blood magic ritual that will allow one mage to enter the Fade, the spirit realm, and defeat the demon there, so that it is essentially exorcised out of Connor. However, this blood magic ritual requires a lot of life energy. For some reason, an entire person needs to be sacrificed. If you do this ritual, you have the option of either going yourself, if your character is a mage, or sending one of your mage companions, if you have them, into the Fade. If you don't have any mage companions, then I don't think you can do this ritual with Jowan, because Jowan needs to be in the material plane as he has to do this blood magic ritual and maintain the ritual with the blood magic. But the result of accepting to do this ritual is that Connor's mother, Isolde, offers herself up as a sacrifice. If you accept, she is killed quite gruesomely, and you are able to save Connor. But if your warden themselves goes into the fate, you are actually able to make a deal with the demon yourself and let the demon return at a later date to possess Connor once again. But in either case, Connor lives and is, at least for a while, demon-free. However, at a great cost. His mother's life. And not just his mother's life, but the knowledge that he lives because she died, because she made that choice for him. The final choice, I think some might consider to be the ideal one, which is that if you have access to the mages in the Circle of Magi, they are able to help you perform a similar ritual to the one that Jowan offers, but without the blood magic, without any sacrifices. They just need a large quantity of lyrium, which is a magical ingredient, an external source of magic. Resolve the situation there if you haven't already, and that situation is a whole can of worms in and of itself. And you have to side with the mages as part of that quest. If you side with the mages, then they will be able to help you perform this ritual. If you sided with the Templars, they will not be able to help you, because the surviving mages will be under Templar investigation. But if you do choose to go this route, you have to travel away from Redcliffe, even if it's just for half a day or a day by boat, towards the Circle of Magi, leaving the village to an uncertain fate, because even though you did defeat on one night those undead creatures attacking the village, even if you made it into the castle and confronted the possessed Connor, maybe made him able to fight a little bit better against the demon from inside, who's to say that the demon possessing Connor won't take control again and finish what it started by killing the rest of the village and the entire castle? Who's to say that the little power that Connor has managed to hold on to keep his mother and uncle and father alive won't just slip out of his grasp, and that the demon won't just go on a fully murderous rampage? So that's one of the very surface reasons why you may not necessarily think that going to the mages for help is the ideal choice. But let's say that for some reason you believe with full certainty that Connor will be able to hold on while you go for a day or two to the Circle of Magi. And let's say that with some luck you had already gone to the circle before you visited Redcliffe, and you had already sided with the mages, so there's no demon blood magic situation to sort out at the circle, and you can just go straight back to Redcliffe to do the ritual. The same thing, you need to have a mage willing to go into the Fade, either yourself, one of your companions, or in this case it could also be Jowan or the first enchanter. In the case of the lyrium ritual, because there's a lot of other mages there to keep the ritual stable, you can choose from a wider variety of mages to go into the Fade. But the same thing applies. If your character is a mage and is the one going into the Fade, you could still make a deal with the demon for it to come back later to possess Connor once again, or else you just exorcise it, you defeat it in its own realm, and it is forced to leave Connor alone. On paper, I'm sure that this version of the events, where neither Connor nor his mother die, is the one that people think is the ideal solution to this quest. And I myself would have thought that too initially. When I was young, when I was a teenager, I was always playing a goody two-shoes in video games, the righteous character, the paladin who would always do what's right no matter what. And of course, on paper, saving a child and his mother seems like the right thing to do. But I was just 13 the first time I played this game in 2010, 15 years ago. So I could not grasp the complexity of this choice. There is a lot more under the surface. First and foremost, even if you mostly blame Jowan for what happened, who you blame, who your character blames, is ultimately irrelevant. The reality of the situation is that any of the villagers who survived, either by fleeing the village or surviving the events with your help, all the servants at the castle who may have been spared, all of Eamon's knights who may have been present, Isolde, Tegan, they know the truth. They know that it wasn't just Jowan doing some blood magic thing and causing all of this. They know that Connor got possessed by a demon and his body was the one making all the decision. His voice was the one mocking them and laughing at them and laughing at the deaths of their friends and family and loved ones every night in that village and in that castle. That is not something that those people would just forget. So no matter who you blame, you have to realize that as you're doing this quest, even if you save Connor's life, that doesn't mean you're making the right decision. It doesn't mean you're making the right choice in those people's eyes. There will be people who will resent Connor, who will hate him for the rest of his life for what he did, even if he was under the influence of a demon. There will be people who will hate his mother and his father and you and everyone else who was involved in protecting him from death, which is a just punishment in their eyes. There will be people who will be even more scared of mages than they were before. There will be people who will want all mages to be killed or to be made tranquil so that such a situation, like what happened with Connor, will just not be possible. And then as well, if you sit to think about it a bit more, you will realize that even if you save Connor and his mother and his father, and you try to save as many people in the village as you could, the damage has already been done to the villagers, yes, but also to Connor. He will never be the same again. This event will traumatize him, even if he himself does not remember what the demon did through him. Even if he doesn't remember things directly, everyone around him does, and eventually, someone will slip up. Eventually, he's going to find a note that someone left, some writings in a journal. He's going to overhear people talking about it behind his back when they think he isn't listening, when they think no one's there to hear. Or he might simply be told when he is older, when he becomes an adult or something, by his parents, because they think that he deserves to know the truth. Either way, there is no way that such a huge traumatic event for everyone involved would be able to continue to stay a secret to Connor forever. Eventually he would find out, and eventually he would be forever marked by this, even if the demon is driven away, never to return. Even if Connor never succumbs to a demon's influence ever again, he will be scarred for life. Even more so, he will have survivor's guilt. He would wish that he had died that day, that he was killed along with the demon, then be spared, when all of the other villagers' lives were not spared. If you saved him with a blood magic ritual and his mother died, he will wish that he had died instead and his mother would have lived, even though of course she herself would wish completely the opposite. But such is the way of life. There are not really good and bad decisions, only difficult ones. Connor's future is bleak. No matter what you do, either he's dead and he has no future, or if he has a future, no matter how hard you try to help, even if you try to save as many people as you can, the damage has already been done. And the thing is, I don't even like this quest all that much. I think the Arl of Redcliffe quest is one that I find fairly boring most of the time, because the whole, oh, help us defend the village against a horde of undead part is fairly boring. You have to talk to some people, try to convince some of them to fight. You can convince the tavern owner to give them free ale so that the militia is drunk when the undead attack so they're not as scared. You can get some holy symbols from a priest so that the knights feel better protected, and you can convince a blacksmith to repair their gear so that it's in better condition. And after that, it's just waiting for the attack to happen and killing the demons mostly by yourself. The second part with infiltrating the castle is frankly more of the same. You just kind of kill undead on your way. The most interesting part is when you meet Jowan in the dungeons and you get to find out what's actually been happening. And then of course, the real climax of this quest is when you meet Connor for the first time and you see who really is behind everything that's gone wrong, and realizing with horror that it's just a child. And then you're the one who has to decide what to do with him. It's very interesting really that from a gameplay perspective, this quest is not very fun, it's pretty boring, but from a story perspective, when you reach this climactic point after all the destruction that you've seen, something clicks and you're left wondering what to do. And sure, you may not have thought of everything. You maybe didn't realize all of these possible consequences if you didn't realize the gravity of the situation, and you were just like, well, this is just another evil thing that I have to destroy, and then everything's gonna be perfect again. Everything's gonna be great after I deal with a demon. And then you may not find this quest as interesting. You may not find this quest as compelling, but if you do think about these things, it's a different matter entirely. Or as well, there is the possibility that you are forced to do what someone may consider to be the worst possibility, which is that you have to kill Connor, because maybe you went to the Circle of Magi first and you decided to side with the Templars. And then when you found Jowan in the dungeons and you heard that he was actually responsible for everything, you just killed him because you thought it would be dangerous to keep this blood mage alive. Who knows what he could do even from behind bars. And then when you get up there and you have to decide Connor's fate, there's nothing else you can do. There's no mages to help you because they are under Templar investigation. There's no Jowan to help you because he's dead. And the only option you have left is to kill Connor. I do think that that is one of the most interesting and conflicting and emotionally impactful things that can happen to you organically. It may even be your first playthrough and you may not even know about what's going to happen, and you just get there and you've made this combination of decisions leading up to that, and you're left with the uncomfortable conclusion: a child must die in order to save everyone else. I do think some people probably think that this is the worst case scenario, but I think considering everything I know about the Dragon Age setting with Connor and Redcliffe and how he feels if he lives, the way I know those villagers feel, and there would be at any moment a chance for Connor to be killed brutally as an act of vengeance. Who knows what people can do to him? Who knows what would even happen? Maybe he wouldn't even die. Maybe they would try to kill him and he would be pushed again to the brink of desperation, and he would accept again a demon into his body and become an abomination and slaughter even more people, despite his attempts to avoid that from happening. So in fact, for me, it's not an ideal choice. It's not a great choice. No, it's a very difficult choice, a terrible choice. But to me, out of the possible decisions you can make, killing Connor is probably the best one. People will hate you for it, but in the long run, he will not live a tortured life just waiting for something to push him over the edge, hating the fact that he survived while other people didn't. And the people who lost loved ones and friends and neighbors to the demon, they will also view Connor, who is dead, more sympathetically. They will probably have this very different narrative. They will believe, if Connor dies, that there was this evil blood mage who put a demon into the child, into the poor child who had to be killed out of mercy because the demon was torturing him and the demon was doing all of these evil things. And so Connor would be seen as a victim, one of the many victims of the Redcliffe tragedy, instead of one of the villains at the core of that tragedy. Of course, you may feel free to disagree with me. Maybe you think that a different choice is the better choice. That is perfectly fine. But the point that I'm trying to make by talking about this quest and about this particular choice that you have to make in this quest and how it feels like one of the most difficult choices in the entire game is that I think this was the core of what Dragon Age was supposed to feel like. Overall, I don't think it managed to do so completely, but I can see through this quest, I can see through a lot of the origin stories, I can see how there was genuinely a strong attempt, and oftentimes succeeding at this attempt, to truly make the player live in this gray moral area, especially in the main quests, where you are part of this shady organization who will do anything in order to stop this terrible blight from taking over the world. And you could think that that's a noble goal, sure, but at the same time, what about the damage that you may be doing to everyone around as you're pursuing this apparently noble goal? I am absolutely fascinated and super curious to think about what would have been an ideal version of Dragon Age Origins in terms of the story being fully within this true gray morality area. What if every single main quest had fully followed this idea that there's no right or wrong answers, only difficult choices that are hard to swallow and which have far more complicated consequences? I'm really wondering how the game would feel if, at the very least in terms of all of the main quests, this idea had been followed and executed better. There would be something really special that people would remember about Dragon Age, about this world that keeps them questioning their choices and making them come back and trying different playthroughs because they're not really sure. What if the other choice was better? There is a lot of replayability in Dragon Age Origins. There is a lot that makes you question the choices that you made and makes you think, what if I had made a different choice? What would the world of Dragon Age look like? What would Thedas look like? What would Ferelden look like? And more importantly as well, even if I had made the same choices, how could they be viewed differently? This character that I just roleplayed made these specific choices out of a particular motivation. Maybe that motivation was love, maybe it was hatred, maybe it was bigotry, maybe it was vengeance, maybe it was a selfish or selfless choice. But what would the same choice look like chosen by a different warden, a different main character? Would that choice still feel like a good or bad choice, or could you make it feel different simply by changing the motivation of your character as they're doing that particular action? So I hope that you can see what I'm talking about here, even with these difficult choices presented to the player not necessarily being all of the major choices that the player has to make in the game, but being a significant enough number of choices. I think Dragon Age Origins does something special because it can make you feel like a hero. It can make you feel like a villain, like someone who's actively doing things to damage the world, to leave it worse than you found it. Even if at the end you're being lauded as a hero who saved the world from the Blight, you know what you've done. You know the choices you've made and you know why you've made them. And you are left to stew in those choices because the very last thing that the game gives you is that epilogue. Those epilogue slides that are fairly vague, but still trying to provide a satisfying conclusion by hinting at the kind of future that you and your choices have created within this world. I think this is the mark of a great RPG because it's one of those things that can keep you coming back to play it or to talk about it with other people, to write fan fiction, and to reimagine things. I think these things, when we're talking about narratives in games, especially in RPGs where you have choices and consequences that actually feel very different, they're very fascinating to talk about because people can have such different reactions to them, such different opinions. And so I hope you enjoyed my musings or ramblings about this one quest in Dragon Age Origins, this one quest which in fact relates to the entirety of the game. I'm really curious to find out what choices you made in the playthrough that you consider to be the most canon. Which are the choices that you like to import into Dragon Age 2 or Dragon Age Inquisition? And do you still feel conflicted about some of those choices? Because the fact of the matter is, people have asked me for quite a while now to make a video where I talk about my canon world state in Dragon Age. But I just have a lot of difficulty choosing just one world state that is my ideal world state, or the one that I consider to be canon, because there's so many of these choices that change so much about how the world feels like, how the story shapes itself, especially in terms of the narratives that the people within the world tell themselves as a consequence of your actions. So I don't really fully know how to answer that question that other people have, so I'm very curious, what are your answers? Let me know down below. I would really love to see discussions in the comments and just talk to each other about these things. And even though this is a game that came out in 2009 and it's 2025 right now, or it may even be later when you're watching this video, I think it's never too late to talk about a story that has so much impact. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're looking forward to more videos about Dragon Age and other games I like, do remember to subscribe and leave a like and comment while you're at it too. They really help. This has been B Tier Mutineer. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.